let's welcome our next storyteller. It's Archy Jamjun. Arch? Archie!
I'm horrible with that. All right. So as I was flipping through my CD case, I asked my 19-year-old self, what is the right CD for your first job as a stripper? I narrowed my choices down to Lil' Kim's Hardcore and Foxy Brown's Il Nana. For those of you who don't know, they were Brooklyn's finest female rappers from the 90s, and they were not just rivals, they used to be friends. And Kim was winning, so I chose Foxy because I always cheer for the underdog. You know? Anyways, Stripper Daddy had contacted me on Manhunt, which is a gay dating site thing. I was a college student at Champaign-Urbana, and he lived in Chicago in a high-rise, and he was a music executive. Wow. His first message read something like, Posh Rice. That was my name. I like the Spice Girls, too. Posh Rice. I love Asian boys. You are so hot. I would love to cover you with money. Have you ever considered stripping before? Now, my current self cringes at this message, but my 19-year-old self was like, oh my God, am I pretty enough to be a stripper? Like, there are no Asian men in gay porn. Like, I can break a glass ceiling with this. And then I looked at Stripper Daddy's pictures and like, ugh, he wasn't that hot, but I mean, he was like 6'4" and like 200 something pounds, but then I thought about it and I was like, wait, I am not gonna fuck Stripper Daddy. I'm not even gonna date Stripper Daddy. I'm just gonna strip for Stripper Daddy. And Stripper Daddy had very like detailed instructions about how this was gonna go down. I was gonna wear my street clothes with like athletic clothes under it and then a jock strap. And then I was gonna strip while he jerked off, and then he said it would take like less than an hour, and I was gonna get $100. So I thought about it, but I knew I was gonna do it, because I'd always fantasized about being a sex worker. And I think, what is so funny about that? I think the key word here is fantasize, because I knew that being a sex worker wasn't like the office orgy I was dreaming of. It was more like go home really sad, take pubic hair out of your mouth, and shower with pumice stones very hard. But I was 19 years old, and I was so good at making horrible decisions. Like, my parents were like, be a doctor, be a lawyer. And I'm like, no, I am gonna be a hoe. You know what is a really good icebreaker? A bottle of Veuve Clicquot and a Grammy nomination form. I walked into Stripper Daddy's apartment very nervous, and he popped open a bottle of Veuve and he handed me a Grammy nomination form, to which I filled in Foxy Brown for every category possible. And I'm pretty sure I am the reason Foxy Brown got one Grammy nomination in her career. But pretty soon it was time to get to work, so Stripper Daddy did what he did. He took off his clothes, he lied on the floor, and like any child of a dragon mother, I had rehearsed very hard for this, which meant that I had watched Showgirls a lot, and it like moves down, and like, I was like a raver too, so I had this, but my dick instead. It's great. But that was like, I did it for a few minutes. Like, I had a whole CD to get through, and I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of failing. But I looked down at Stripper Daddy, and he's so happy, and he's throwing money up at me, and he's jerking his penis, and I'm like, oh my God, do I have a gift? I think I And then so the CD ends, and I'm like, I'm done, you're welcome. And he's like, we're not done yet. And I'm like, oh. Do you want me to start Foxy again? He's like, no. I'm like, but he's like, you need to get me off. And I'm like, oh. My current self is like, oh, Archie, we're so naive. But at the time I was like confused, trying to think, like, did I miss this point? And then he's like, you need to get me off. And You know, like sometimes I would have this tendency just to do something really quick to make people happy, or maybe it was just the easiest way to get out of a situation. And Stripper Daddy was like 6'4", and he had just given me $100. And like in my head, I can hear Foxy and Lil' Kim being like, Archie, you are being too soft. But at the same time, my hand is grabbing his dick, and I'm like, ooh, and I'm like, ooh, you should like kick him in the balls, take your cash, and run out of this apartment. But suddenly I feel his hand on my head, and he's pushing me down, and all of a sudden I'm giving him a blowjob, and that like minute and a half is longer than the whole fucking CD. And when it's done, I wipe my mouth, and I grab my cash, and I get in the elevator, and it's a really slow ride down, and I like don't know what to do, and so I count the cash, and it's $84. I didn't even get the $100. I was the worst sex worker in the world. And if I could tell my 19-year-old self something, it would be like, it's okay that you were the worst sex worker in the world. And 95% of what just happened, you're gonna laugh at one day, and it's gonna be okay. And that 5% that you can't, it was not your fucking fault. Thank you.